I think you guys have probably all figured this one out, but you are at the Luminar AI Deep Dive, and we're going to be exploring Luminar AI today. Now, Luminar AI works as both an application and a plugin. So we are going to be tackling that, and we're going to show you workflows of using it with Photoshop and Lightroom Classic and Photos for Mac OS, as well as using it as a standalone application. And our guests today are from all sorts of subject matter expertise. So they're going to share information about their photography and how they do things. So not only will they show you how they edit, but they'll share with you some of their secrets about how to get the best results. So that's going to be a lot of fun, and I think you guys will really enjoy learning from them and what sort of skills they have to offer. So we are also going to make sure to point out some of the really cool things that were in our recently updated Update 3. And we do have an Update 4 that's on the way. And after Update 4 ships, we will have another deep dive. So I can't give you the exact date on that other than to tell you it's not far off. So we had told you guys that some really cool things were coming. And things like Bokeh AI and all that will be coming down the pike here really soon. But today we're going to be focusing on Luminar AI and all the cool tools that were unveiled in Update 1, Update 2, and Update 3. My name is Rich Harrington. I am the Chief Product Evangelist, and I am your #1 advocate. So it's my job to make sure that you understand and get the full benefit from Luminar, as well as to make sure that your feedback makes it to the team. So we try to represent you within the company, make sure that your feature requests and that your workflows are well understood, as well as be a clear source of information. So a lot of you belong to our AI Insiders community, and you'll see that I post there on a regular basis. Also very happy that Vanelli is joining us today, and he is a great resource. A lot of you know folks. V, why don't you take just a moment to tell folks a little bit about your background, and then we'll go through a couple more housekeeping things. Give them the 30-second version of who is Vanelli if they've never had the joy of meeting you in person.
Well, I'm a working sports and portrait photographer, and I specialize in creative sport portraits. And then I just fell in love with Luminar, and I just absolutely love how I can create my grit look in a very, very short time. So it kind of elevated my photography to a totally new level. And now I'm with the company, so working with the evangelist team, making sure we produce a lot of education and content for everyone.
Excellent. Excellent. And my name is Rich Harrington. In case you guys missed that earlier, so thank you for that. A couple of you were asking, what about the schedule? Well, it's really simple. You go to skylum.com/deep dive. And if anybody wants to put that link in the chat, feel free. This is a really easy way to stay current. And this has the full schedule posted. Now, with any type of a live event, for example, there will always be little things that get in the way, like life. I think we've all experienced in the last year and a half that life can occasionally get in the way. Like a lot of you, some of us are still working from home. So there's a good chance my dog is going to bark. My doorbell's going to ring. Things like that might happen. You know, we're going to all do our best to have an excellent event for you. One of our speakers did have a family emergency, so Ayush Panada, he had to drop out this morning, but we're expecting everyone else today that's on the schedule, and we'll be getting a new guest in there shortly. But feel free to take a look at that schedule at skylum.com/deep dive, and that'll give you a good idea of what topics are there. Although I will say this much, just because someone's an astrophotographer and you're not, doesn't mean you can't learn from them. I love watching other photographers who have different skills show me things, because I learned about color grading from a portrait photographer, but I use it on my landscape photos. And I've learned about composition from portrait photography. And then when I talked to my friend Elia, I learned that he thinks about landscapes as being portraits. And when I talked to Nicole Young, who does a lot of food photography, she calls them food portraits, and she composes and thinks about them just like they were portraiture. So you're going to learn from different people. And that's one of the best things about today, is that you're going to get exposed to different skills. So I hope that that makes sense. And so Martin, as you can see there, there's access to the complete schedule. And you can find that at skylum.com/deep dive. And at the bottom of that, there's also an awesome coupon discount that we got for today. I know that throughout today, you're going to see cool new tools. We're going to mention some things that are in the marketplace, including a bunch of free stuff that we're going to be giving away throughout today. So for those of you that are watching, we will be releasing free content in our insiders community, which is free. So we've got some awesome ebooks, some cool lookup tables, some amazing textures and things like this that we're going to give away for free. But we also have a $10 off code, which is easily enough, Deep Dive 2, that takes $10 off any, including multiple items. So if you've been waiting to pick up sky packs, or you've been thinking about some new looks, templates, things that you need, you'll be able to save $10 on each. Marty's asking, where can we find the recorded sessions? Well, those will go up early next week to both our YouTube channel, which is just right on YouTube. Just type in Skylum and you'll find us, and into our insiders community. So you'll be able to access all of the sessions early next week. We'll get those all live. Okay? So I hope that that helps. Bruce, don't worry. We'll talk all about sky replacement today, and I guarantee by the time we're done, you'll know exactly how much stronger we are than Photoshop, because we've got some amazing abilities, including relighting and reflections and background controls like blurs and transforms that Photoshop does not do at all. We're really honored that Adobe felt the need to take one of our tools and roll it into theirs. It's great because there's all sorts of folks who said, oh, sky replacement, nobody uses that. Well, you know, Adobe seemed to think a lot of people needed it, and they put it in Photoshop. But we pretty much invented it for the desktop, and you're going to see how awesome it is a little bit later today. But that's only one tool of about 60 that's in Luminar. And today with the deep dive, we're going to try to show you every single tool and tell you how they work. Now, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. A lot of you have figured this part out, and you can just type your question in, and that will allow us to see what's on your mind. Plus, if there's a question you love, I already see this happen, there's an upvote. For example, Peter asked, how practical would it be to develop a mobile iOS or Android version? Peter, it's very practical. And actually, on our last deep dive, we publicly confirmed that we're already working on it. Now, I can't tell you when it's coming because it's actively being built right now and researched and planned and developed, but there's a team in place and we are working on mobile. So you will be excited to see that. I'm not even going to remotely promise you a timeline because they're hard at work, but I can confirm that we are working on mobile versions. So you'll be excited to see that. And that also came directly from your feedback, our users, who said it was really important to you. So that's been really awesome. If you guys have been paying attention, a lot of you might have even been invited to some of our recent surveys, particularly if you're in our insiders group, where you've been invited to provide feedback on new technologies that we have in the works to let us know which ones are most important. So I hope that that helps. All right. Well, I don't want to get in the way of Vanelli's demo, but I did mention that if there's anything you want in the store, just use that code DEEPDIVE2. It's good through June 30th, and it will take $10 off any item. And if you buy multiple items, it's $10 off of each. So if there's been something you've had your eye on, this is the best deal because we never really put everything on sale, and this is everything on sale. So I hope you guys enjoy it. And when you go in, you would just click the coupon code field, type that in, Deep Dive 2, no space, click apply, and it takes $10 off each item. Okay? And if you're not a member, please feel free to join our insiders community. I'll be putting a direct link to join so you guys can jump right in if you're not in there. But this is where we post freebies from time to time. We also have special events that are only for our inside members. And we also have articles, tutorials, and if you join the groups, these are awesome. Now, Vanelli, I know you belong to a couple of groups like the Portraiture group. I love seeing the astrophotography group, the product photography group, where people can connect with other users who do the type of editing that they do and learn from each other. What are some things that you've learned within a group, V? I mean, I know you love talking to other people, and there's nothing like having 100 or 300 other photographers who are into what you're in to talk to on a daily basis.
Well, okay, so a lot of the macro photographers got me really excited on macro photography and water drops. So imagine me of all people being patient with the water drops coming down, and it's a totally different level of what's what I'm looking for, of discipline to sit there and take some of these shots. And it's really cool because it's like Facebook for photographers, like-minded people, without all the garbage of the political stuff or the hate stuff.
Or ads.
Or ads, yeah. And so it's neat, but like I said, I really got excited about macro photography, and the water droplets that I'll be doing. So it's a great source of inspiration.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, make sure you guys check out AI Insiders. You can go at insiders.skylum.com, but in just a moment, I'll put a direct link in the chat pod. And why don't we kick things off? So, V, if you're ready, feel free to invoke your screen share, and you could just take over here. And I'll go ahead and let you do a short demo. I'll answer a few of the questions in the Q&A pod, and I'll get a couple of links queued up for folks. So you should be in good shape there.
Yep, now I got it. Great. All right. Well, one of my favorite features of Luminar AI is that the AI technology, and we built it right into the very beginning of any of our images. So, or editing process. So here's a great example of a loving couple during a wedding. If I click on templates, what's going to be really cool here is AI automatically begins to work. So it's looking at this image and it analyzes it, sees that there's people in this image, and then it gives me suggestions on which template or tools will make this look its absolute best. Now I could choose from here, and then let's just say come down here and select one of these templates as a starting point or even as a finishing point. So let's say flawless, for example. So I'm looking through this, and from here, if I feel the effect is too harsh, I can come right down here to the master slider and dial it back. And now I just went from an unprocessed image to a processed image. Now I don't have to start there. I can
And V,
also
before you leave that, I just want to emphasize that that slider at the bottom there, that lower right corner, people miss that one. That one's amazing because it just totally allows you to basically, I call this the anti-troll slider because we've all faced this. We post a picture to social media and someone goes, oh, it's over edited. And that's what happens. You get into the moment, you get tired, you tend to over edit. I always, not always, but 90% of the time, I just back my edits off to 80% or 85%. And it feels awesome at that point because it's just a little more natural.
Awesome. And actually, that was one of the things I learned from you on that. You said it was like a video thing. And you're right, because you get into editing so much that you have to walk away and come back to it. So I can select any of those. And again, AI looked and knew that this was a portrait. This image, in my opinion, is screaming for black and white. The timelessness of a black and white, I love. So again, I can just click on a different template, and what it does is it'll replace everything I just did, so there's no confusion, and boom, it gives me this. Now at this point, if I click on the edit tab, I still have control. So a lot of misconception is that AI takes over your complete editing. No, it gives you suggestions on what it feels, hey, this image can use these tools. Now, if I come up here to the essential tools, this is where us photographers are going to live. This is our digital darkroom. So the black and white tool was already added. So if I come over here, let's say the light, for example, and some of the highlights on his forehead, I could just dial that back. And look at that. It's instantly back where I want it to be. So it did a great job getting me where I want to go. And now from here, I can just add other tools. Let's say like a vignette. So I can come in here with a vignette tool. And what I love about this tool is I can actually choose where I want the center point to be. Now I'll do an extreme so you can see it. If I go to an extreme, look at this. I can pick anywhere around the scene and it's going to give me the center point of focus. So I'm going to feather this here. And once I get it to where I like it, I'm going to dial it way back. And I can even add inner light to the center part of the scene. So here it is. And each of the tools have a little toggle switch to turn it on and off. So you can actually see what it's doing. So here it is without it. And just a little extra makes it look even better. Now, that was one example here. Let's do a landscape. Now, once again, I'll start out with template. And it's going to look at this and it's going to realize, oh, okay, well, there's water in the scene. It notices it. So let's say I come down here, do a dark and rich. And if you notice up on top here, when this is illuminating, that's giving us, it's telling us that Luminar is thinking and is doing its job. So it's going to give us a couple seconds. And look at that. Before and after. Now I'm noticing there's a little fog in the scene. Well, if I click edit, now we just explored up here the essential tools. Well, now if I want to get creative, I can come down here to Atmospheres AI, and I can add additional fog or mist. I'm going to add layer fog. Now watch this. I'm going to go to a 100%, and notice not much was done here. It's this depth that does all the magic. Look at this. It makes it look like it's rolling across the scene, and it's applying 3D technology, depth technology, to where it makes it look realistic. Now, for this particular scene, because there was fog in it, this makes it look more natural. So here's before and after. Look at that. And then if I come up here, I can actually preview what it looked like before and what it looks like after. Now, obviously, if you add fog to something, let's say a bright sunny day, it's not going to look realistic. So as photographers, again, just use these creative tools wisely. So look how quick we're able to edit these two images here. Now I can also, let's say I love this image. I wish I shot this. I absolutely love this. I look at this like it is an engagement image or a save the date. Well, again, if I come over to templates, I already know which template I think is going to look great for this. So I could bypass the suggestions up here, and I'm going to come down here to the purchase ones. The cinematic right here, I absolutely love what the cinematic one is doing. So I'm going to look at that. One click, and I'm extremely happy with what I have before, after. And Rich, what I really love about this is in the past, a lot of the old tools that I used to work with, I would apply something like this, but had no idea how it created it. It was its tools. It just used the tools and it came in, boom, and it applied it. Well, here, once I apply it, I can come over and I can actually look at these here, and if there's a dot next to the tool, then that tool was used in helping to create this. So I can actually go through and teach myself, well, what did this person do to this particular image to make it look as cool as it did? And I just look for those dots and I teach myself what the tools did.
That's awesome, B. Yeah, that's a great looking image. I love that. I'm going to show a couple quick things here for you guys, and I think you guys will enjoy this one, but we're going to give away a free item here. I'm putting into the chat pod a link for our light leaks overlays that are in our insiders community. We did give these away last time. We do have some unique ones we're going to be giving away here in just a moment. V, go ahead and stop screen sharing for just 1 second. And Doug or Hillary, when you get a chance, if you wouldn't mind, if you promote us to co-host, we could just then not have to worry about the screen share. So that's awesome. Just making sure that you guys are not seeing my Zoom interface windows, but you are seeing my computer desktop. Is that correct?
Yes, I see light leak.
Great. And you're not seeing any Zoom windows, correct? Like the Q&A window?
It's not full.
Okay.
Want to make that a full screen?
Yep. All right, good. So you're seeing light leaks. Awesome. So if you guys go to that link we put in the chat pod, there are some light leaks here, and I'm going to show you how these work. But this is a cool thing that you're able to use. For those of you that are raising your hand, please use the Q&A feature. Just click the Q&A button, and that's the best way to enter your questions. So that'll really allow it. But what we're going to show you here is how we can add overlays with the local masking tool. Now, a couple of you are asking about layers. And here's what I'll tell you. So Luminar AI itself doesn't use layers, but it does allow you to create multiple overlays with blending modes and masks. And so you can layer multiple images using that tool. And you've seen some improvements to that tool already, and we've got more coming. Now, one of the magic of everything we do is enhance AI. If you're not using Accent AI in just about every image, you should reconsider because with one slider, it allows you to fix exposure, color, tone, and highlights. And it's a great tool. Additionally, structure is what happens if clarity got a major upgrade. It's kind of like clarity with superpowers because it lets you add texture and detail, but what it doesn't do is mess up skin tones. And notice there how that light is now just really well defined, but the skin tones got nothing mucked up with them because it uses AI to automatically mask out the skin tones, which works great. So that really makes it easy. Again, for those of you using the raise hand feature, please use the Q&A button so we can see your questions. All right, now what I want to show you is the local masking. So in here, we get the ability to add. So if you choose texture, this is going to give you the ability to load new textures. And a texture can be anything. It can be paper textures, for example. So a little bit later, I'm going to give a link out to this awesome paper texture kit that we created that you could use to give things a cool feeling. But what I want to show you here is also other things we can do, including those light leaks and how that's going to really make it easy for us to add cool feelings to our images. So let's just go in here and I'll go to my textures collection. I just keep them in a folder and you'll see light leaks. This is the same set that you're able to download and it contains 20 light leaks. And so these are awesome PNG files of sort of bokeh. And so you can layer these on top. And what it's going to do is when you drop that in, it loads the layer and lets you add it. Then you could adjust not only the opacity, but more importantly, never be afraid of this advanced settings area. This is where you can transform it. So we can change the blending mode in real time and use something like lighten, for example, or screen. And now that light leak is adding to the other lighting effects that were there. If I want to add another one, I could do that. Just click load texture now, and it's going to let me swap that out. Or you can actually add up to 10 of these local masks. So if you want to add another one, just click the add button and choose texture, and you can go through and load yet another one from that collection to create these cool overlays. And again, we put that link into the chat pod, and that lets you load in additional textures, and you can adjust the opacity of those, the blending mode, and everything. Plus, look, flip and flop very easily, or use the place command. And the place command gives you a free transform tool. So you could change the shape if you want to resize it, or you feel the need to stretch that and transform the overall shape of it. Notice how easy it is. And so there I kind of transformed it to put a little bit of a golden light on the guitar. And that just works really nicely. Plus, you can combine different styles of textures. So a little bit later, I'm going to show you that ability to load in textures with transparency. And you can do that, for example, with our paper kit. And so you can load those in, and we'll give this paper kit away a little bit later today. And you'll see in here that I've got different types of options. For example, here's some black edges. And these are ones that I personally made. I actually took some paper out, ripped it up, scanned it in, and created these overlays. And what you're going to see when it loads here is that it actually has a transparent area. Now, when you load a high quality texture like the one I loaded there, it may take just a second to kick in, but that's going to allow you to layer that, and you could then easily adjust it. So you can see there that I've got the free transform tool, and I could adjust that mask and create that effect to give it a nice sort of rough border. And these are just like the rough borders I used to create when I ran a music magazine back in the late 90s and early 2000s, which is a cool vintage look for rock photo. And
Yeah,
you can mix that or blend it in.
a lot of coffee break members love that you did these.
They're a lot of fun. And here's
Yes.
something else. Even if you're not into this style of photography, I want to show you one of the most amazing things about Luminar. So now I've got this multi-layered look, right? I can go copy, select another image, and paste. Just Command C, Command V. So if you've got a style of photography that you want to quickly process or you want to reuse, you can actually take the look from one image and copy and paste it to another. And you'll see there that it actually applies all those different overlays and all that effect. But when you go in, everything is still layered. So if you need to, you could just go right into the edit menu again and tweak it. So if I feel like that texture is just a little too bright or I want to tweak it, no problem. When I jump into edit, I could see that texture, open it up, and I can continue to refine it. Now, when you open up a complex layered image here, if you ever see that little thing scanning there, that color shifting, that's indicating that Luminar is loading everything into RAM. It's just like when you open up a complex Photoshop document, it does the same thing. It has to load, and that's because we're loading multiple layers of information. But notice here, I have full flexibility and I can make those changes and have everything update in real time. So I can refine that look and easily continue to modify my photo, giving it the look that I want. And there I made a much darker look. By the way, this could be a lot of fun. You can do double exposures with this effect, which is something we'll show you just a little bit later on. And I want to do one more edit, then I'm going to pass it back to V and answer a couple of questions. We haven't really shown a landscape example, and I just want to get sky replacement out of the way really quick. We'll come back to it for sure, and Elia Liccardi just absolutely rocks sky replacement. He's the most amazing person that I've ever seen use it, but I want to explain how it works for a moment, but I'm going to do it in a different way. I'm going to show it to you on a portrait image, so you really understand some of the benefits of the tools. So let's open up this one here, and I'll just reset the image for a second. And I'm going to remove the replace sky. So there's some things inside of sky replacement that people miss. First up, it works on portraits. And not only does it work on portraits, but it has some amazing tools for portrait photographers. So what we can do with sky replacement, I'll just give you the top to bottom really quick so you fully see the power. It's available here under Sky AI. So if you need to browse, you could see all of your skies here. And you could actually see what's in that folder. If you want to add your own, just choose Show Custom Skies, and you can copy folders in there, and they're going to show up. In fact, you could actually put other folders in there and nest them, and they will all become available in the drop-down menu. Or you can click the plus button. This makes it super simple, and now you see the ability to visually browse, which was recently added. With Update 3, we also now automatically align the sky to match the horizon. So you'll notice in this case with the tilted horizon, it automatically detected that tilt and started to align it better. If you need to though, you still have great control here under sky orientation and horizon position. So horizon position lets you rotate that sky if you feel like you want to just tweak it a little bit to better match the tilt, or if you want to shift the sky up or down to change its relative position in the scene. Also, horizon blending is great because it allows you to create a smooth transition to the vanishing point. So you can have a nice gentle transition there at the horizon, which works well. Now, here's a couple things that you can't do inside of Photoshop. So in Photoshop, if you drag the sky around, you get gaps at the edge. We automatically scale it, so you could freely move the sky, and it's going to automatically scale and react really well. Now, a couple things here. The sky is in focus, but the water's out of focus because it's a portrait. Well, don't forget about that. Under sky adjustments, you have controls here that don't exist in Photoshop. So you could defocus that sky so it matches. If you want that sky to be a tad darker or a little warmer or cooler, look at how you can color grade the sky to match the scene. And even add in haze so it matches the real environment. Now, here's what's cool. Scene relighting has 3 awesome sliders. Relight strength is going to transfer the light of the sky onto the rest of the scene. Relight saturation is going to transfer the color of the sky onto the rest of the scene. And then relight human affects just the person. So as we start to change the sky, you're going to see that the lighting on our subject changes to match. So if I'm using something that's a little bit more sunset-like, you'll see how it warmed up the image. Now, if you ever don't have perfect edges here, although I really think all those little tiny hairs on his head are looking pretty darn good with the default settings, couple things to note. Use the Relight Human slider if you've got a person to create the perfect transition. And under the mask refinement tools, this is where you have fix details. This is going to analyze those really fine areas like hair, leaves, or grass to make that perfect transition. So you can see there how we were able to really blend that very seamlessly and easily. Plus, now you wouldn't have it in this water here because it's rough seas, but we do give you the ability to add reflections and even blur the reflections to match. So I'll just show you a landscape example with smoother water for a second. But V, were there any questions about sky replacement or anything we showed here to make sure that people got it?
Nope.
Okay.
So far looks really good.
All right, then let's do a smoother example here. What I'm going to do is copy these settings from this image and paste them to this image. But here we've got smoother water. Remember that copy and paste option works really well. Now what we can do here is transfer some of that sky to the water. So I'm using everything that I previously used except one new tool we didn't talk about. And that is the ability to add the reflection. So you can see here as we increase the reflection amount, it's transferring the color of the sky, and it can even blur a little bit. Plus now, here's what's awesome. If we move that up or down, what you're going to see is that look at the sun, right? As the sun went up, it moved in the water. Now I moved that too high there, but you could see that I did it on purpose, how the sun actually reacted to that movement, which is cool. So as you start to move things around, the reflections, look at that sun there as it moves across the water, and it even, as it passed behind her, did a proper reflection on the water, which is pretty cool. So it's going to react to the layering of the scene there, and that's really complex under the hood, but should be easy for you to use from the controls. So don't be afraid to open this tool up and really get some things done. All right, V, are you ready for me to pass back to you?
Yes.
I can do one more if you need a second.
Oh,
All right, then I'm going to pass back to you, and I'm going to tackle a few of the questions that you guys have in the Q&A pod. So thank you for that, guys. I hope that helps.
Well, one of the questions I think you'll answer great is why, like especially with clone and stamp tool, why when you apply it, if you had any edits to it, you reverse the original first, and
Sure.
then. So if you want to answer that.
Sure, let me tackle that one. So we have two tools for removing blemishes. One is erase, and one is a clone. So they kind of have different purposes. And let me show you both really quick. So there's a really good reason, and the biggest reason is that it's now non-destructive. So I'm terrible with lens spots, but I'll save that for a little bit later. Vanelli's laughing because he always gives me a hard time. But let's say we were using this photo here, and we wanted to touch up some of the scratches and dings in the background, okay? First up, like Vanelli said, templates are a great time saver. So, I could use this as a starting point. I don't have to, but I see great options. Or I could say, you know what? I love some of these easy portrait ones. Go ahead and just do a really nice vignette. Or go ahead and do tack sharp, and it's going to go in and quickly fix. Now, a couple things while I'm here, before we do that, I'm going to use Enhance AI here just to really get the right exposure. And one thing that I like is Smart Contrast. Smart Contrast is great at adding or subtracting contrast intelligently. And you can see there how easy it was to bring that out. Now, I told you might hear a doorbell. Some of you might be hearing a fire station nearby. So let me fix this here. And there's two things. So if I use the erase tool does not need to revert the image here. And that's because it's analyzing the image as is. And as I add this, what it's going to do is just look at the surrounding pixels and make new pixels. By the way, with update 3, both Mac and Windows users have non-destructive erase tools now, so you can use the undo command to change. And you see how it took out that blemish. But if you go to the clone tool, and I want to emphasize, this is on purpose, by design, not a flaw. I'm going to explain the logic to you and hopefully it makes sense. What happens when you choose the clone tool is the image is going to revert to the unedited image. That's important because if you go in and you start to do things like lens correction, or you've got distortion applied or upright, it doesn't want to create a section where you can't see the whole picture. And particularly for things like lens correction, cloning could produce really bad results. So now what happens is I'm basically modifying everything under the edits. So now when I click, what I'm able to do here is, easily target exactly where I'm sampling, use my left or right bracket key to make that edit, right? So I could say, hey, Option or Alt click, line that little crosshair up there on that same position and fill that in nicely, right? Option or Alt click, line up the target and paint. And that just made it super easy to be very accurate with where I was sampling from. Why did we do it that way? Well, now when you exit that tool and you choose any other tool, all of your edits are reapplied fresh. So if you did extra editing to this picture, color changes, transforms, everything now applies like it was a brand new raw file. So imagine if you had a vignette on there, right? So if I had a vignette on there and I went to use the clone tool, oh, I see a spot down here, and I started cloning, then I went to edit the vignette, you would actually see a line where the old vignette was versus the new one, and it would have to create a new layer every time. So you actually want that if it's going to be non-destructive, which it now is, it never was before. Now when you go to the clone tool, it goes to that clean image so that things like lens correction and vignettes will not screw up what you're doing. And so you have total control here, as you see, boom, to get rid of all of those scratches, right? Left bracket, smaller brush, and I got it. Now, when you're done and you exit, boom, it goes back to normal. Notice too, by the way, glow, one of my favorite ones if you've never tried it before, Orton effect. It's lovely on portraits and landscapes. It produces this nice brightening glow that adds light to the scene. That one's cool. But if you want light that sort of richens the shadows, use Mystical. And Mystical gives you this nice, rich, dark light. Now, you could add color to it, or you could have it warm up the scene, but Mystical and Glow are like adding lights to your scene. It's kind of like instead of having to carry strobes into the field, although I do recommend you still use actual flashes or reflectors, but this is beautiful at just filling in that light. So there you have it. And V, I hope that made sense. Is there anything you want to add about cloning versus erasing?
No, you hit the nail on the head. And I know I see what he's asking. A lot of times, if that disturbs you, like in his case, it bothers him that it does that, well, do all the cloning ahead of time.
Sure.
Then start with your cloning first. And like you said, it's non-destructive. We can always go back and then apply the changes. So just change up your workflow to see what's best for you.
Yep. And remember, you've got the history panel here, so you can see what you did if you have to go backwards or choose and undo. So you've got that ability, which works really, really well. All right.
Awesome.
V, you ready for me to pass it back to you now?
Yep.
All right.
Let me share my screen. All right. And we should see a portrait.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. So believe it or not, Rich, this was a throwaway shot. And what I mean by a throwaway shot is, and I can't believe I'm going to be showing you guys all this, I totally messed up on this particular image. All right, so I'm going to come over here to the history tool, and I'll show you what I mean. So this is the actual original image. And let me get down to it. There we go. So here's the original image, and I messed up. I'll be the first to admit it. Look where the light source is. It's down here. So I never even bothered using this image until recently. I realized, well, you know what? If I crop the daylights out of this, ooh, look at that. Now it's looking much better. And I'll show you what I did, and I'll go back and revert, is once I did this, then I created a template based on my work. And I like to do that a lot to where if I'm experimenting, I'll create different versions, version 1, version 2. Well, this is what we're kind of turning this into. So once again, this was a throwaway shot. In other words, a shot that was rejected, and just spending about 15 minutes, boom, we're able to recover it. All right. So, and like Rich showed, the history tool here is great for you to walk back through and see your changes. So the only thing I did different from the original is I did do a crop, and I'll get right to the crop here. Cropping at the head, I have no problem with that. I like that style. Some people don't. Here's my advice: when you crop, keep in mind, and again, this is all non-destructive, so I can always come back and rechange my crop. When you're cropping, especially the head, too little makes it look like you made a mistake. Too much makes it look like the person doesn't have a forehead. So you have to kind of add it to your taste and go from there. All right, so image looks great. First thing I like to attack, and again, this is if I decide to do the enhancements on my own. Accent AI is like my best friend. That automatically improves color, detail, tone, and depth of an image. Just that one slider, look at this. That one slider is actually, I'll come down here to Light Tool, is helping replace all of these. All right. Now you still have those, because if you feel that guilty feeling of, oh shoot, I did one slider and the image already looks great, I got to do something else to it, they're asking me more. If you get that guilty feeling, then open this up a bit, enrich the blacks a little, and you can continue from there. Now, it's a portrait, so we've already discussed the essential tools, the creative tools. Well, if we come down here to the portrait tools, let's work on her face. I could, and this is so cool. I'm gonna go to an extreme. Look at this. I could face relight. So if I didn't put enough light onto the subject's face, if I didn't have that reflector bouncing light back, I can always fix it here. Ashley already is slender, so I don't need to slim the face. Eyes, she already has beautiful eyes, but with the way I shot it, again, they're a little too dark. So let's enhance them. Here's eye enhancer. And I love this. Removes the dark circles under the eyes. Look at this. It may not look like there's a lot there, but there is. And now, one of the new features is the iris flare. So now I can actually add, look at that. Right on the bottom of the eye, I can actually add a little flare as if I had a cross lighting, bouncing light back into her face. Now I can go so far as changing the eye color. Now her eyes are brown, so if I look at that, by clicking on brown, and I'm going to dial this back a little bit. Now I just made the eyes look even richer. It's like making it. I mean, isn't that incredible?
I love this feature because a lot of people think it's only for changing the eye color, but actually matching the eye color just allows you to fill it in. And photographing brown eyes is really, really hard, especially on a dark background, because they're gonna start to reflect that darkness and they're hard to see. And V, just there's some that magic iris flare there. How awesome that is! Plus the eye enhancer. So watch how the new irises can add a beautiful flare. And go ahead and rock that eye enhancer back and forth there. You could see how the new composited one just really takes on nice sharpness and clarity, which is great. So I love that. And then, of course, don't forget the vignettes for the eyes. That eyebrow enhancer. I'm one of the few people in the world who doesn't need thicker eyebrows, but most people love them.
Yeah, and again here, I'll go to an extreme so you can see it. But look at this. It's able to target the eyebrows here. And then I typically have the models put, we usually have a makeup artist. If I don't have a makeup artist on set, I always try to get them to put a little lip gloss. In this case, let's say, well, she didn't. So I can still come in here and just make the lips look a little richer. And then, of course, we can whiten her teeth. And look at this. It knows enough not to make them look like little chiclets. So I like that here. She already has
V, while
beautiful
you're
skin.
queuing it up, let me just tackle two questions that were burning. A couple people are like, oh, I'm trying the links, it doesn't work, or I'm trying the link and it didn't work, or it's not inside my Luminar X membership. AI Insiders is not Luminar X. AI Insiders is a social community. So in the chat pod, right near the bottom, there's a link that you can click to join, and then we'll be accepting you throughout the day. Then those links to get the downloads will take you right to the post, or you could just search for Light Leak with the search menu, and it'll take you to the post that's there. So that'll make it easy to find. So feel free to use it that way. And for those of you on mobile devices, we'll be leaving those freebies up after the event for several days, so you'll be able to access them. Go ahead, V. I didn't mean to
Awesome.
interrupt you there. It's just a
No
lot of
problem.
people were getting nervous about that they were going to miss out on those freebies, and we didn't want them to do that.
Gotcha. And then here's our skin. I'm going to give it just maybe halfway. And I like how it keeps the pores in here. The shine removal is great. In this case here, there's not too much shine. But look what it just did to there. Look at that little shine here. I'll move it off. And now when I apply it aggressively, look how it tackles that and gives it more like a powdery effect. But I want a little bit of that shine to come through, so I like it right about here. All right, look at that. So before, after, and one thing I will do is if I come up here to light, I can actually select the camera profile. And for this particular camera, I believe it was the DA10, I just like a portrait profile best. And watch how it slightly changes it. It's doing its thing. And there it is. Look at that. So even that don't forget to check that profile. Now, one thing, Rich, right here, this is killing me, and this little Italian malarkey thing going on. So I want to hide it, and the easiest way to hide it is in the shadow. So if I use a vignette, I'll come in here, I'll select her as the subject, and then I'm just going to dial back. Now, when I do this, one thing I'm noticing is that the flower is not as bright as it once was. Well, I'll show you one last tip here, and that's the local masking. So for those that complain about layers, here's local masking. Watch this. I'm going to add a basic tool to this. And when I do, let me get out of it and go back in. Oh, you know what? There we go. And I notice, Rich, if I forget to choose a subject, sometimes that messes with some of these other tools.
Yep, you have to just commit the tool before you switch.
Yep. So I messed that part up. I'll have to refresh it to get back to where I was. But a lot of times I'll just come in and I'll add a local mask to brighten just this area here. Or if I don't want to deal with masking, that's the whole goal with AI, I can come down here to super contrast and then
This
just
effect is
attack the
amazing,
shadows.
guys. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
And
this
then,
is like shadows and highlights plus curves got married and had beautiful children.
yeah. And what's neat about it is, so we got that going here. And I'll go right about there. Now, I just did a global change. Well, each of these tools does have a layer mask. So I can click on the mask and I want to paint in the effect I just did, but I only want it to affect just the rows. So I can pinpoint exactly what I want when I do this. So here it is, before and after. And I can even bump up the midtones a little bit. And the only thing that's going to be affected is that rose itself.
Very nice.
There we
Very
have it.
nice. That's a nice finishing touch there, V.
Yep.
If you don't mind, V, I
it draws
want
the
to.
eye in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to share one more thing here, and it's actually perfectly timed. So let me go ahead here and let me just share my screen. And Stephen had a question. Actually, sorry, somebody just posted a question about a bird on a limb. It was Jan, actually. And I just happened to have a bird on a limb photo queued up because another person was asking about seeing a nature photo. Plus, I'm going to give you a Lightroom tip. So here's something that's interesting, right? So if you're working with raw files in Lightroom, there's two ways to use Luminar. You can go to the photo menu and you could say edit in, and what it's going to give you the ability to do is hand off a flattened image to Luminar. Well, I don't suggest that because you don't get the ability to re-edit. So you got two workflows here that are amazing. First up, if you want to hand the raw file from Lightroom to Luminar, go to the File menu, choose Plugin Extras, and just say Transfer to Luminar AI. This is going to actually hand off the raw file temporarily to Luminar so Luminar can see all the data inside the image itself. So when you switch to Luminar, it's going to actually open that up and give you the ability to use the raw file. So what you're going to see here now is that it brought over the actual raw data. So if I had any question on that, if I take a look there, I could actually see that information, and this is the raw file. So now when I use accent, it's going to really evaluate that exposure and let me just get the perfect balance there. And if I use sky enhancer, it's going to recognize a little bit of sky back there. Structure is awesome here. Now, someone was asking, what happens if I'm going to apply the template? Templates generally do not have cropping. So apply a template either before you crop or reapply the crop afterwards. And that's going to help. Now, a couple things here. V was showing you that super contrast. That super contrast is an amazing tool because watch what we could do to our shadows here where the bird was getting a little lost. I could lift the shadows and then move their balance. And look at how that just totally rescued the bird and brought them out, right? And then I can do the same thing here with the midtones and emphasize the midtone contrast to really nail that. Plus, if you're dealing with a shot like wildlife, don't forget about structure and details. So structure is great for bringing out the details, and it's really nice because it does it in a very intelligent way. But the details tool offers small, medium, and large details. So instead of globally sharpening and adding a bunch of noise that you don't want, like you see how that just destroyed the background, sharpening would too. Medium details lets us bring out just the feathers. And small details brings out the small area, or I could tone that down a little. Plus, while you're in here, you'll actually see right below it denoise. So this lets you get rid of luminosity noise, which is that grayscale noise, or color noise if there's splotchiness. And that'll allow you to clean that up nicely. So you could use those to really blend that. Additionally, don't be afraid of dodge and burn. So dodge and burn are painting with light. So if you want to, you could use dodge and burn here to tone down an area. Now, usually it's going to be strong to start, and that's okay, because we're going to blend it at the end. So I could say that I want to go ahead and darken this branch down a little bit, and I'm just painting across the branch. And then I could say, you know what I'd like to do is lighten the breast of the bird here a little. And I just paint over the bird. Now, with the amount slider, I can tone down the strength of that light adjustment and just dial in that light fill. So I had both shadows and light added to really balance to pull that in. And that's really quite helpful. Plus, if you're doing a nature photo or a landscape photo, you may not want to do a classic vignette that we see with portraiture. Instead, what I would suggest is going over here to the local masking tool, come on into basic, and what we can do is actually make a nice adjustment here. I'm going to choose to use a gradient mask. Now, is our next guest arrived yet? I'm going to go ahead, is Jack here? I'm going to go ahead and cue this up, and just let me know when he's set and ready. It looks like he's here. That's awesome. So we're going to introduce our next guest. But watch here how I could pull down that exposure at the top of the frame to pull you into the bird a little bit. So this just makes it simple to do that. Plus, you can combine. So after you've added that one, and maybe we cool down the top of the photo just a little, and notice how we can separately process the shadows versus highlights there, so that the trees got darker, but the sky really didn't get touched. But if I need to, I can also grab the paintbrush and simply erase away here on the bird so that that mask doesn't touch the bird itself. So this just gives you great control there to really finesse that. If you ever want to see what you did, by the way, you've always got this little eyeball icon here. So you could preview before and after, or you could take a look at a split screen with the one next to it. That's useful too. But what I suggest when you're ready is you click apply and it sends it back to Lightroom and puts it right next to the original. So this way, Luminar had access to the raw data. Now, one more workflow that's really awesome is if you have Photoshop installed on your system, I suggest a little tweak, and that's this. So when you've got a raw file here, instead of sending it over into Luminar directly, what you could do is say photo, edit in, open as a smart object in Photoshop. And you don't actually even have to know anything about Photoshop. We're just going to use it as a stepping stone because it's going to hand off the raw file to Photoshop. And if you did any edits to that image, they're going to carry over into Photoshop. So it actually opens it up into a layer. So notice it takes a second for Photoshop and Lightroom to talk to each other too. So if it takes as long to go to Photoshop as it does to go to Luminar from Lightroom, maybe you'll understand that that's Lightroom doing the handoff. But notice here, this is a smart object. So if there was something I meant to do in Lightroom, I just double click on it and I'm right there into Camera Raw. So maybe I wanted to use their optics correction. So I turn on the profile correction, right? And I say, okay, that's great. And I really wanted to just do that auto adjustment first. Oh, that wasn't very good. So let's just go ahead and undo that. And I'll click OK. Well, now I am free to use Luminar. And I could run Luminar as a non-destructive filter. So it runs as a smart filter in Photoshop if you apply it to a smart object. Everything you do is non-destructive. So what I can now do is quickly make some changes to this image. So I can see that I really want to bring out the texture. I really want to punch up the detail. So to bring out the texture in this scene, first up, get the perfect exposure with accent. Then use structure to bring out the structure, the texture. That's looking great. A little bit of details here, and I could really refine those surfaces. So look at how the metal now is just looking three-dimensional with a little touch of sharpening, right? So this makes it simple. By the way, if you want to get some quick mood, the mood tool is amazing. And we're going to be giving away a bunch of free LUTs later today. But these are color recipes, and you can mouse over these to preview. Now, I know a couple of you want to see improvements to the mood tool. We've heard you loud and clear, and those are in the works, but they're not out yet. But these give you great recipes that you could use to apply. And when you find something you like, it's super simple to adjust the strength as well as the contrast and the intensity of the color for that, and you're all set. Then you click apply. It drops it back into the Photoshop file or the layered TIFF, and then you close and save. But here's what's amazing. Nothing is destructive. So when you return this to Lightroom, it is a layered TIFF file. So you see there that all 12 of those effects were dropped onto the Photoshop file. Takes just a second, passes it off. That's great. Boom. Close and save. Now, if I go into Lightroom Classic, you're going to see that it drops it right next to the original. So it's going to return that to my library there, and it put it right next to the original in a group, which is cool. See, they're right side by side, grouped. But look at this. Now you could say, photo, edit in Photoshop, and just open up the original. Because when you do, look, bam, you've got smart objects and smart filters. So you could double click and edit the raw file. You could double click and re-edit Luminar. In fact, when you do that, it's going to open up Luminar exactly where you left off with all the settings applied non-destructively so you can change. So the destructiveness of plugins in Lightroom is 100% how Adobe built Lightroom. But if you just pass the image through Photoshop, you get non-destructive filters. And when you open them up, you got the full ability there to jump in and tweak. So if you realized you missed something, or you really wanted to pop something here, or you forgot to add that awesome mystical glow we showed you earlier for those rich, beautiful shadows? Well, no problem. Click apply, it updates, close and save, and it's going to hand it back off. And when it does, don't worry, you can still use those Lightroom tools. So when I hand this off, I realize, wow, there's this really cool, wacky angle here. And that was by design. It's a Dutch angle, but maybe I want to use upright to fix that. So let me just do this one fix, and then Vanelli, we're going to go ahead and introduce Jack, and we'll get him started. But watch how this goes. Bam, we're there. Close and save. And now we are absolutely free to continue here. So if you realize that there's something you forgot to do, no problem. You could simply open up your develop module and make any changes that you want. So there we have it. I can go right here and easily go to transform, and I say, oh, I meant to do level, and it's going to level that photo, or I meant to do a balanced one. Look, I'm still free to use Lightroom. So Luminar, Lightroom, Photoshop, they all play well together. So we know not to tell a photographer to choose sides or to pick their favorite child, but we want to be one of your favorite children. So you take us to the picnic and we have a fun time together. So, all right, we're going to tackle some of those.